It's time for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. It's PRosé, a couple of PR pros drinking, rhymes with rosé, and talking to fabulous authors. And how was your weekend, Cindy?
You know, just another weekend. A little bit of writing, a little bit of cleaning, just nothing glamorous.
A little bit of cleaning. Fun.
Yeah, I know, right? It's good stuff. How about you?
I had a friend in from out of town. We had a lovely time. It's beautiful in Florida, which our guest has a home, part-time home, I think, in Naples, which we're going to find out. And Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Are you excited about it?
Thrilled. Couldn't be more excited.
Well, for those of you that are excited like me, I actually got engaged on Valentine's Day in 1990 in Paris.
Ooh.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Cliche, but I did. Yes. So we thought that we would talk to somebody about love, and it's the perfect time to talk to award-winning author Geraldine Brown Giomblanco, aka the Bride Whisperer. Her book, Geraldina and the Compass Rose, tells her own story of how faith and a guardian angel, I think from Atlanta, can't wait to find out about that, helped her find the love of her life. She is a former VP and a 30-year marketing guru, and today she's dedicated to helping others find their true north path. Cindy, welcome, Geraldine Brown Giomblanco, and cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Wait, hold on. Cheers to you, ladies. Happy Valentine's Day.
What are you drinking with us?
It's the Santa Margarita, the good old basic yummy, goes with great with salads and pizzas and pasta. And as you can see, my last name has expanded. Brown was my maiden name, and now I'm Giomblanco. So I like the Italian twist for my line. Excellent.
So do you think it's too late for Cindy to find true love? Because that's what I want to get into right away. If you are the so-called bride whisperer, I have a lot of friends in Atlanta that are single, and I'm sure when I said that, they said, what? And is it true you're really helping your girlfriends find the love of their life?
Well, it seems like I have that magic touch. Apparently, I didn't know I had it, but when I was in my 20s, it started. And I probably was a bridesmaid and AKA, what do you call it when we're not married? Matron. No, maid of honor, right?
Yes.
So, right. Maid of honor means not married. So it's probably a maid of honor maybe 5 or 6 times and a matron of honor a dozen times too. I think I qualify for that movie, The 27 Dresses. Didn't even know that was going on. But yeah, it seemed that, I think it really kind of goes back to who I am. And I was this little girl who always was in love with love. I loved my parents. I loved my grandma. I loved the dog. I loved the mailman. Anybody. So I always had this open mind to attract that kind of love. And I could recognize it right away. And there's so much more I can say around that. But I want to give you guys the opportunity to kind of lead me into what areas you'd like me to talk about, because the book happens to have a lot of love in it. My husband and I met in 2015. We married a year to the day, and I was never married before. So here I am, 49 years old, thinking that maybe the plan I had for myself, married with children, wasn't going to happen. But something very mystical happens to me, and it's chapter 1 in the book. And that's where the movie people love. And I think that's going to answer your question about Atlanta. If you'd like me to proceed, I will continue with that part.
Well, sure. Let's start. Cindy and I were talking a little bit before the show started. We're curious about your grandmother. Your grandmother, was she a nun?
No.
Okay.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Well, that's what we were. I heard that she was in a convent, so I thought, what's the deal?
So Grandma Rosaria, that's her name. So if you look at the back of the book, you can see the compass rose, it's metaphor. The rose is actually in the center. My grandmother's name was Rose. Her name was Rosaria Gentile, Gentile. And the Geraldina part in the cover, my grandmother named me Geraldine, and after Saint Gerard, which in the Catholic faith is the saint you pray to for unexpected women. So my mother was pregnant, and she would pray to Saint Gerard, and somehow Geraldine came from that. And but in her Italian accent, she would call me Geraldina, which I wish kind of was my real name, but it's not, and it confuses quite a few people. But it's Geraldine is my name, but Geraldina is what my grandmother called me. So that's where the story starts. My grandmother did come from Italy. She was in Abruzzo, Italy. She came as a young woman, little girl actually, well, 12, 13 years old, and part of her family was still in Italy, and then they settled in Bridgeport, Connecticut, then moved to the Bronx. But my grandmother went into the convent as a young woman and realized that it wasn't for her. Only because I think, there's in my book, I say because they want to give you a specific job. And she wanted just to help the orphan boys. And she was afraid she was going to put in the kitchen because she was Italian to cook, or something like that. But I could relate because what I got from that was my faith. She was the matriarch of the family. She's the one who had the rosary beads in her little apron, and so I made the meatballs and prayed the rosary, and that's how I learned about her love for God. And I was curious about that in my childhood. That was my go-to place. Some people call it meditation universe or whatever. I still believe that it's God. That's the word that I grew up with, and that's where I went. And that's why the subtitle of my book is One Woman's Faith-Filled Journey to Find Love. Because if I didn't have that faith over the course of those 30 years, I don't really know where I would be today. You're going to get some sorrow in the story, and you're going to get a lot of joy from the story, and a lot of moxie because I had to take care of myself for 30 years, right? And I think, all women, we're independent, yes, but it's nothing like having a partner to help share in life's everything. And that's what I was searching for. And I wasn't going to settle. So, Cindy, my first words of advice is do not settle. Even if we're older and wiser and everything, I believe, and I firmly believe, and for all you Valentine big-hearted people out there, that we have this incredible capacity to love deeply. And why not? Why not? Go get it. Because there's somebody identical on the other side thinking the same thing. And I think part of also my little philosophy is that, when in our younger years, we try to be perfect. And, good old Brene Brown, the gift of imperfection. When I started reading some of her books, I loved the way she kind of forced me to be that vulnerable person, and when, can you relate to that?
Well, no, if as you get into your late 30s and early 40s, you lose that need to appeal and make everyone else happy. You just feel like, man, okay, it's my time, and so I just think it's a beautiful time to be alive and to appreciate things a lot more. So, yeah, that the sense of who you are and the not settling. I think that's an important message for Valentine's Day, whether you've got a man or you are.
And that actually is part of my story. So at 49, I resigned from the big job. I didn't have, I started my own little consulting business, which was perfect. So I can relate to, building up a business in marketing. I was a VP of marketing for shopping center development, and I traveled all over the country. So I was constantly on the road, but I was constantly hopeful that I was going to meet somebody on an airplane or in the airport or something. But at 49, I realized, what? My happiness wasn't going to be linked to the person that I thought I'd be with. It had to be linked to my own pure happiness. And when I really let it go, that's when everything changed for me. But I have to share. My first chapter is called The Man in the Airport. And
your guardian angel.
Scandalous. No?
No, not scandalous. It was divine. I don't know what it was. it was something that was so profound that I couldn't wait to get home and write it in my diary that I met somebody who really I felt was like my guardian angel. And I say in my diary that my grandmother, Rosaria, sent him. Now, I never called my grandmother Rosaria. I just called her grandma. So when I used her full name, that's the whole magic of this story. So I'm 30 years old. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, there, that airport, and my flight gets canceled. And I see across the way a man. Now, everybody else is up in arms. It's chaotic. You know, they're screaming at the poor stewardesses. And I was really calm. I was really happy. I got out of my meeting early. I was able to fly home a day early. I had my carry-on so you guys can relate. You know, everything's right with you, so you can really care less what's happening around you. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to grab a book. I'm going to go get a drink or a dinner, and I'm going to relax because I don't know when we're going to get on the plane again. And I happen to have this, and I say it in the book, Eileen Fisher. I loved her stuff when I traveled. I had this really nice sweatsuit, which is so in style now. Everybody's wearing them everywhere. But back then it was a little, it was like 30 years ago. So it wasn't exactly what people were doing. But I went into the bathroom and I changed into this nice comfy outfit and off I went. And this man who I saw across the way is waiting for me outside of the bathroom. But the weird thing is that it didn't surprise me. So I thought, he asks me, he says, "Hi, can I buy you a drink or buy you a beer?" That's what he said. Now I'm like, oh, I don't like beers, but I said, okay. So I sit down with him, and so I'm going to relate, Vicki and Cindy, to a lot of my chapters as scenes because I always saw my story as a movie, not as a book. And I'm an avid reader, but I really love the movies. So he makes this circle on the table, like I'm just going to put it on my hand, and he's going like this on the table, and he's talking to me, and he's saying stuff like, your grandmother's with you. My grandmother had passed away 2 years earlier, and you have this incredible ability to love deeply, and you have lots of angels around you. I mean, who is this man? And he tells me his name is Joe George from Atlanta, Georgia. And he's probably twice my age. I just remember gray hair and a pretty simple person, not somebody that you would remember from an aesthetic look. But it was what he was saying to me that was mesmerizing. Then he told me never to lose that little girl in you. And I thought that was so strange because I have that kind of attitude in life. I'm silly at work. I usually wear my hair in a ponytail. I ride my bike with my hands up in the air. I play in the sand. I love to color. And I was thinking about that. Where did that come from? And, as time went on and was writing the book, I realized that was a very critical point that he was making about who I am as a person. And then he said, "You're going to receive a gift." And when he explained it, I didn't feel that he meant like a material gift. I felt like it was more of a spiritual gift. And you'll learn more about that later on. And then the biggest thing that he told me is that my grandmother had a message for me, and not to worry, I will know. And so when I get to the airport back to LaGuardia in New York, because that's where I lived, I just wrote it down, and it just came. I always said if they had to do the ink test, I didn't make this up. This really happened to me. It was June 20th, 1995. Here I am sitting in this airport. Well, 20 years later, this man hit it on the head. So I don't want to give a spoiler effect here, but Grandma
Now, have
came
you
back.
ever seen him since the book has been written? Has Joe contacted you? Do you
Well,
know?
I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. I was doing a huge development of shopping centers, and I was sad at 30. I was sad because I thought I had some broken relationships. I really thought I'd be married with children. And I felt like this this whole encounter was to give me faith, to give me the courage to continue, to not let that be my, the judgment of where I am in life. And I did a segment with another podcast, and it was single shaming. And I thought that was interesting because you don't realize that people do that to you, like, oh, Geraldine, who are you bringing to the wedding? Or it's another christening, or this, or, my mom's secretly in the background with her girlfriends. Do you have anybody for my daughter? And that's just normal. But my work associates, like, what's wrong with you? You got some of that, they're trying to figure out, or they tease me and say, oh, which John are you dating now? Or which Michael, or which this, and after a while you get thick skin about that, and this Joe George man gave me this kind of like, it was okay to be exactly where I was, and inspired me to not give up and not to settle. And it's my own interpretation of all of this. So Memoir is from my personal memory, am I exactly perfect in it? But this is what the residual effects were of what this man said. Right. And enough, powerful enough. I should have grabbed the diary. It's Lucy. It's a little Lucy red book. And like she's hitting her brother, Charlie Brown, to stay out of it, out of the diary. And I love the word diary better than journal. And I say journal in the book, and I really want to change the book and put it back to diary because I really love it. Because I was speaking to God in my story. I said, guess who I met today? It was like I had this huge excitement. I met my guardian angel, and I felt that way. In the Catholic faith, we believe in that. We believe that they're angels. We believe that these saints have special, a special gift, a spiritual gift. And when you look at my book,
we need to try and reunite you. I think we need to put a social media call out and see, can we find Joe George? Because, man,
guess what? So I never answered the question. Sorry about that. He left me a message. So he never gave me his business card. I gave him mine. So he left a message on my voicemail at work in Pennsylvania. And I remember, the missed calls, you can find the number,
Yeah.
you can see the number. We didn't have that back then. So I couldn't check the number. And he left me no number. And I tried to look him up. And I actually worked with a lot of great ad agencies that came out of Atlanta. So we were in Atlanta a lot. And I just thought it was kind of like, what was that show? Touched by an Angel. Remember that show? It was very, very popular back in the 90s, I think. That's kind of where I felt like it was a human angel. This person picked me. And where does that come from? I would love people's feedback on that, because I'm not here to say what it really was. But when you continue to hear the rest of the story, it's going to freak you out. And I mean, as simple as that. My husband, on our first date, it was a blind date. The first thing he did, my hand was out on the table. He made a circle on my hand, which brought it is. I'm like, can't wait to see with the screenwriter how he's going to put this into the scene, because I go into this whole, back of my head saying, where's that diary? What did I write in it? Something's happening. I got the goosebumps. And this is what I usually start my talks with, the goosebump theory. If you get the goosebumps, which a lot of people do when I get to this part, something magical, something, I called it miraculous, which is a little bit different than magic, right?
So after you met Joe George at the airport, and you went home, and it really, like, it shifted you emotionally, what did you change in your day-to-day, and how long was it between that and meeting the man of your dreams?
The immediate answer was 20 years. I met Mark 2015, so that was 95. So 20 years later. You know what, Cindy? It really goes back to a combination. It gave me faith, gave me courage, gave me hope. Mm-hmm. And there were other profound moments in my life where I buy a new diary. And if you were to look at my wall, well, before I sold my house, I had a library, and I had all these diaries sitting up there, but there were only 10 to 20 pages filled, and the rest were blank. Because when the next big thing happened to me, I bought a new one and I wrote it in a new diary. what happened. And when the book, so I guess when I went, I did call Lifetime. Something miraculous happens with my ring. And that's really the Rosaria part comes back. And it was so profound. My husband and I were in tears. We're like, this has to be a movie. I mean, it wasn't like everybody says, oh, you should write a book or this should be a movie. No, no, no. It was, no, this has to be. This gave me purpose. This all of a sudden, it all came to life. All of those diaries, all of those moments that I thought I'd be doing something big came through. And so when I started the whole project, I just pulled these things that happened because I knew I was going to write about it. I can't explain it anything else. So it gave me hope. And my husband was like in shock. He's like, where do you come up with all this stuff? He actually, there's a time you're going to learn about it when we meet, and we're on his yacht out in Montauk, and he's making me coffee, but he just got it from the farmer's market, and it was Jamaican coffee. And at first, I made 3 different manuscripts. So the second manuscript, I explained the Jamaican coffee series, where you kind of meet Mark in the beginning. That's my name. And the editor didn't like that, so I had to go back to the drawing board and do a 3rd manuscript because they don't want you to meet him right away. They want you to over time, which makes a lot of sense.
I've got to ask you a question, not to interrupt about the story.
No, go ahead.
But I have friends in their 50s, specifically a woman in Atlanta who's a widow, and she's been going on the dating sites, and she's given up because she says everyone's telling her, well, lie about your age, at least 15 years, you'll never get a date. And that's kind of been working. But she's kind of where Cindy was, I don't need anybody. And she's already in her 50s and she's giving up. What advice do you have for those people out there that don't like dating sites and haven't met their guardian angel yet?
Yeah, right. I think one thing just to distinguish about the guardian angel thing, remember, I didn't seek him out.
Right.
All right. So I didn't go pay somebody to read cards or do anything like that. It wasn't that kind of thing. And, when I give my talks, especially in that community, I don't want it to be like that. I didn't seek this out. This happened. So I think we are angels for each other. Some stellar advice to her that she's able to manage that thing that's confusing her. But to answer your question exactly up front, I just wrote a note. There was a chapter that didn't make it into the book, but I'm going to write about it later on. It's called Toupee or Touche. And the story is, I would tell you, do not lie about anything. The truth is the way to go. And my profile when I was online, because my girlfriends were like, you need to go online. And I never felt that was going to be the way I met anybody. I always felt it was going to be an intimate networking or chance meeting my person. And that goes to following your deepest intuition and going with it, not just hearing that it's there, but taking action towards it. So when I was online, I wrote the most authentic, true to me profile with a real picture of who I was at that time. And the guys that I met and the dates that I went on, one in particular, and I'm laughing because it was in Westchester, New York. It was at the Ritz-Carlton. They had a little cafe area, beautiful. And I'm meeting this person and I had his picture and I'm going back and forth in the lobby, looking for him in the cafe or wherever. And he's just not there and I'm about to give up. And all of a sudden I see this man and forgive me for, I don't like to place judgment really on anybody, but you can tell he had a toupee. Okay. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And he looked like, you remember Carol Burnett, Mr. Tugboat, Mrs. Wiggins, and he had like this little pot belly. And he's just sitting there. I felt bad for him. And this is, I think in the movie, the scene, I'm a little wise guy too, because I walked up to him, pure confidence, saying, "Are you," I forget his name, Jack? And he says, "I am." And he's, "Geraldine?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "Question for you." And I didn't even sit down yet. I go, "Do I look like the girl in the picture?" And so I think he understood where I was coming from. Obviously, he did not look like the guy in the picture. And you know what? I said, he was just in awe. Like, he just looked at me and I said, "All right, let's have that drink," because I felt like
I
I
got all
needed
dressed
it at
up.
that
I'm gonna
point.
get that drink.
And we had a great time talking, but I said, "Thank you, Jack," paid my own way probably, and that was the end of that. So as we get older, I was more courageous, and I think that comes with experience, and and having your little mantra saying there's nothing wrong with me. And that would be the other part of the advice. It's like, no, be who you are, because there's somebody on the other side looking for exactly what. And we met a couple last night, as a matter of fact. We're at Bellini's in Bulls. We met the couple. They met online. They were both widowed. They're both in their 60s. And she took them on vacation. They went to, I forget what island or wherever they went, Ohio. And now she brought him here to Naples. And there's this budding romance. So my husband and I, we find this, every day there's some kind of beautiful love story. Doesn't matter our age, doesn't matter what we look like, or our credentials. I really come from that place of truth, and I love that part about my story. I wouldn't
And
give
you
that
never
up.
gave up from your 20s till you turned 50. You were just calm in the fact that if it happens, it happens, that you'd like it to happen.
Are you kidding me? I listened to Sade bawling my eyes out, I had my moments of drinking the wine and saying, really, this guy's, I thought he would be it. So there's a couple of chapters in there, and one is I'm solo, and that's where I meet somebody at a wedding, and it gets pretty intense how it didn't work out, and it left me a 6-year period of needing that closure, that I really didn't get till something very unbelievable happens. So there's a lot of these things that have happened that some people would think I was making it up, but it didn't. And I think that's God's way of getting us ready for the next part, or people call it season, or, I would always think that I was going to be doing something big. My parents were like, "What is she talking about?" And here it is. So that intuition carried me. I called writers for Lifetime. I knew somebody, and he's like, I gave him the wow story, the ring story, and he's like, "Geraldine, that's unbelievable, but you have to write a book first. Nobody, who are you? Nobody's going to take you serious." And I think that, as women in business, you ladies know more than anything, if you don't do it, it's not going to happen, right? So I sat there in my kitchen when this man gave me that bit of advice, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this book. And it took 2.5 years, but here it is.
And in
And
between, you were watching episodes of The Bachelor, were you not?
you know what? I was not,
You
because
weren't? Okay.
That looked like a guilty.
I'm sorry. No, I've seen it. I've seen it. And I love the idea, but the idea that, I don't know, you got to get to know the person, you know? It takes a little time. I mean, my husband and I got married within a year, and I've heard of beautiful, lasting relationships that, people met and married it within months. I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm saying for me, I mean, we're still learning about each other. We're year 5, and I'm sure people feel that way over year 20 and 30. And I look at beautiful couples, when I go to church and I see them, holding hands at 90, and I think it's freaking crazy. You know, I I open my story with an intro. We were talking with my my editors. Can I just put a quick shout out to these ladies who were unbelievable. Jacqueline Burke, Cody. She helped me organize the book and put it together and helped me get my voice and my words. Spent hours with her. Then Kara Hauser, she has a writers group in Fairfield County, Connecticut, right outside of Westport, or in Westport, Connecticut. And she is Emmy nominated, unbelievable journalist. And then the person that really helped me with the bottom line edits was Stephanie. I'm sorry, Kimberly Caldwell Steffen, and I spent tons of time. So I didn't do this. I didn't do it like your typical publisher with an editor. I was on the phone. We were talking concepts. We were talking how do we tie it back in. I didn't pay attention so much to the prose. So the rosé, prosé, but I wanted to get the story out. And it was how to tell the story so that I could attract the movie people. And believe it or not, I have the director from Law and Order, David Platt, who read my book, and he felt like it could be somewhat of a episodic series leading up to the 30 years of being single from my 20s to my 50s. And your ups and downs and the dramas and the joys and life's challenges and your career. I mean, I have a lot of great career stories in here. It's about life in general. But,
absolutely. The book is Geraldina and the Compass Rose. And before we let you go, with Valentine's Day around the corner, with men and women thinking, okay, this is the worst day because I don't have a Valentine, maybe give a couple of tips on how they can look at Valentine's Day maybe in a different light.
Okay. Well, one, if you live in Naples, come and see me at Barnes & Noble. I'm going to be there on Thursday in lieu of Valentine's Day.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, at 2:00. And then at the Ritz-Carlton on Vanderbilt Beach on the 18th between 4 and 7. But, my advice for anybody who's single, or, I think it goes back to what Cindy said. I went out with dates with myself, and the day I met my husband was actually one of them. I was planning on going to my favorite restaurant. I had taken the day off. I went to Barnes & Noble, believe it or not, to buy a book and bring it to the beach, and because I was taking the next day to go to the beach by myself. And so it was the same thing. It's like, what am I going to wear? Where am I going to go? And then fully be present when you get there. Don't try to be anything but there. Don't try to be anything but there. And I say that a lot. Go to the movies. Enjoy it. Go be with a friend or a family member or something like that, or sit in a park. But be present. Be present with your beautiful self. And I think people have a tough time with that. I don't know why. It takes courage to go out there, right? Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Oh,
I think that's
right.
Fantastic advice. Go on a date with yourself. So
That's it. Cheers. I still do that. Actually, when my husband's working, he's a luxury yacht captain. That's our retirement plan.
Nice.
He loves the water. We live on the beach here in Naples for 8 months, but then we go to Montauk, New York, where the love story happens. And it's just an amazing place out there. And we live on a boat for a couple of months, and then we come back here. And we are now avoiding all the chilly, willy weather.
Right. And you are never too old to find love. Never, ever.
No, not at all.
Thanks so
Cheers.
much for being with
Ladies.
us. We wish you the best and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Valentine's, and thanks again for having me on your show. I loved it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Join us next week for another edition of PRosé with Vicky Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.